Chapter 24. The Dawn. The boat scraped against sand at last. Kai gripped the side and swung himself over, boots sinking into the wet shore. He hauled the boat higher up the beach and wedged it against a stone to keep the tide from taking it, then turned to face the island's interior. Barely 10 paces of black sand separated him from where the ground began to climb. He tilted his head back. The island rose in a slow incline toward a ridge, dark against the sky. Whatever lay beyond it, the rise kept hidden. But the nexus needed no ridge to be seen. It rose regardless, a spiral of corrupted Perpetual twisting upward like a whirlpool or a tornado, feeding itself into the Nightshawl above. He started climbing. The sand thinned to loose rock as the slope steepened. The air thickened with every step, pressing into the depths of his lungs until each breath took effort. Beneath his feet, the ground shivered in a slow, constant pulse. His hands stayed closed around Aira's sword. The climb felt longer and more sluggish than he anticipated. His legs had begun to burn well before he reached the ridge, and by the time he did, his breath came in ragged pulls. He stopped there, chest heaving, and looked down at what the island had become. The center of the island had collapsed inward. A crater, steep-walled and precisely round, sunk into the shape of a bowl. At its center gaped the fissure. Dark Perpetual poured from it in thick, coiling ropes of vapor that climbed higher and higher until they became the nexus, spiraling into the sky. The light it threw off didn't belong to any fire Kai knew, painting the crater walls violet and a green gone the color of rot. He started down the slope. The descent offered nothing to trust. Stones slid loose beneath every step, and he picked his way down, one hand on Aira's sword and the other out for the rock, ready to catch himself. The ringing in his ears sharpened the lower he went. So did the trembling, until it beat in time with the nexus, like something enormous breathing just beneath the surface. He reached the crater floor and stopped 50 paces from the fissure's edge. My, you don't know when to give up, do you? No. Runs in the family. Velthera laughed. The sound was cold, threaded with an undercurrent of malice. She stepped from the swirl of dark Perpetual ahead of him, as though the shadow had simply coalesced to take her shape. So it would seem. Your father had the same stubborn streak. Do you know what he said to me the night he came for us? The night he took up that crude little hatchet and thought himself a hero. Kai's grip tightened on the sword until his knuckles ghosted. He said he'd kill us for taking his baby girl. Velthera's voice dripped with mockery. Said he would kill every last one of us for what we've done to his precious daughter. Such conviction. Such rage. She paused, as if to savor the memory. It made his heart beat so much faster when I tore it from his chest. I fed from that pain for cycles. The words landed like a sucker punch. He was calling for her, you know, Velthera continued, her tone almost conversational now, even as he bled out on his knees. Nia, over and over, like a prayer that might save him. She tilted her head. It didn't. And she couldn't answer, anyway. Nycurus made sure of that. Chained her up, held her head still, forced her to watch every moment so that she, too, could drink from our power. The memory of pain. She smiled then, cruel and satisfied. That's right, Kai. Your father died believing his daughter was already dead. Never knowing she was right there, watching him fail, watching me tear that weak little heart from his chest while he gasped her name. Your name spilled out of him too. Kai's hands trembled. Rage flooded through him, white hot and overwhelming. Monster, he said. And now, here you are, Velthera said softly. Just like him. Stubborn. Foolish. And about to die the same way. She paused with a growing smile. Kai raised the sword. Well, not exactly the same way. She snapped her fingers. From the fissure behind her, something rose. A crystal, dark and pulsing, roughly the size of a hair. It floated into view, spinning slowly. Its surface was already beginning to take shape, facets forming, edges sharpening, hungry for purpose. Velthera's eyes gleamed. You see, you owe me. You shattered my crystal, destroyed cycles of work. Her voice dropped, venomous and satisfied. But your Ilir, your life force, it's perfect to see this new Voskarism Zilith. Kai stared at the dark crystal, watching it pulse with hungry anticipation. Then he met Velthera's gaze. My father came for revenge. Eris suffered because of what you stole from her. He widened his stance ever so slightly with the sword raised over his head. But I'm not here for either of them. I'm here because you won't stop. Not ever. Not until someone makes you. A shadow flickered at the edge of his vision. He turned. Nycurus materialized from nothing, dagger already whistling toward his neck. Kai threw himself sideways. The blade missed by inches, close enough to split the air beside his ear. He hit the ground rolling and came up with the sword raised just as Velthera's trident crashed down where his head had been. Sparks exploded, stone shattered beneath the impact. Nycurus came in low. Velthera struck high. They coordinated their attacks so that each movement forced him into the other's kill zone. Kai twisted, blade singing as he barely caught Nycurus's dagger. The impact nearly tore the sword from his hands. His arms screamed. His legs shuddered and his boots skidded to find purchase across the loose stone. Velthera's magic carved the air. Violet fire erupted in serrated lines, seemingly fracturing reality itself. The space around him warped, bending under the malevolence of her power. Kai ducked, feeling the heat sear past his face. Nycurus was already on him when he recovered. Her dagger flashed. Kai jerked back, and the edge caught his shoulder, dragging a shallow line through flesh. Heat spread wet beneath his tunic. He snarled, pivoted, and swung the sword in a wide, graceless arc. Steel found her forearm. Nycurus recoiled with a hiss, dark ichor spraying from the wound. Velthera lunged before he could reset. Kai twisted, and the razor-sharp tines scraped past his ribs, tearing fabric and opening skin. He gasped, stumbled, barely kept to his feet. They circled him, tightening the ring with every pass. He was outmatched, and all three of them understood it. He raised the sword anyway. What am I doing? He thought. I'm no swordsman. I'm a rune runner. His breath slowed. The fight slowed with it. And there it was. A single heartbeat where Velthera overextended. Her balance tipped too far forward to dispel a hex. He dug into Eira's pouch and thrust a handful of penicillium dust at her face. She reeled backwards, arms flailing amidst the cloud. Velthera avor felof tus, Kai shouted. The incantation roared from his throat, voice crackling with raw command. Velthera's eyes went wide. Her feet left the ground. Gravity abandoned her, and Kai hurled the sword with everything he had. The hilt struck her square in the chest and bounced off, clattering across the dirt in front of her. The force of it launched Velthera spinning like a tumble of dark silk, hurtling backward toward the fissure's edge. She slammed against rough stone, rolled, and vanished over the lip of the slope. Nycurus screamed and lunged from his flank. Kai saw her just in time. Her dagger came for his throat. Empty-handed, Kai Kai stepped into the strike, much to her surprise. Zemzar! His fist met under her sternum mid-lunge. Radiant light erupted from the impact, blinding white and searing hot. Nycurus's head and limbs whipped forward as her momentum died. The dagger skittered from her grip. Her body convulsed, wreathed in crackling divine fire, and she staggered back several paces, gasping, smoke rising from her robes. If you like pain so much, go ahead and feed on that. You brat! Kai pressed forward, chest heaving, blood dripping from his shoulder. He locked eyes with her. Tell the Abyss I said hello. He drove his boot into her chest. Nycurus flew backward, arms windmilling. Her scream tore free as the ground vanished beneath her. She twisted, clawing at empty air, and the Nexus seized her, dragging her down into the fissure's black heart. Her scream thinned, then cut out, and she was gone. The air twisted. A rush of force slammed into Kai's back and hurled him to the ground before he could brace. The impact drove the breath from his lungs. Invisible weight pinned his limbs flat against stone. His fingers clawed at the dirt. His body wouldn't answer. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Velthera stood over him once more. I once knew the Myr'ides who designed that incantation from the old tongue, Kai. I also saw her burn at the Worm Mother's hands, but not before I learned her secrets first. Her cloak billowed in the unnatural wind, hair wild and unbound, her silhouette backlit by the surging Nexus. Her face had gone still, but her eyes glinted, hungry and evil. She lifted her hand. Her fingers traced glowing runes into the air above his chest, violet and precise, pulsing as they metastasized. You've taken much from me, Kai. My Night Coven, my Ebon Crystal, time, too. But all of that I can rebuild. It's nothing compared to what I lost over 600 cycles ago to the Ninefold Fracture. I want to share that with you as I rip your Ilir from the disgusting body it inhabits. The runes interlocked into a lattice and sank into his skin without warning. Pain detonated in his chest. A gasp tore from his throat as fire seared through his veins, his own pain, and then a second current beneath it, older and vaster, centuries of it compressed into a single unbearable second. The runes burrowed deeper, past flesh, past bone, hunting. He felt them inside him, tendrils probing the hidden places where body met soul, until they found purchase, found his threads, and they pulled. Kai screamed. His Ilir, anchored deep within him and woven through every part of his body, came apart thread by thread, the fine connections that made him real severed one by one. The runes tightened, and his soul wrenched upward, torn from its nest. It was worse than any wound, like being turned inside out, like every memory and every piece of who he was being drawn out through a pinhole. Velthera's eyes burned. A mortal soul must always seed the Voskrism Selith. This time, yours will suffice. Kai's back arched. More threads snapped. His soul lifted further from its moorings, drawn inexorably upward, and above him the runes shifted, their glow deepening. Ribbons of luminous essence rose from his chest, torn free, streaming into the dark crystal taking shape behind Velthera. It was feeding on him, on what made him Kai. He felt himself thinning. His mother's face flickered and dimmed. Hera's voice, the weight of the crystal in his hand, all of it slipping away. Pulled strand by strand into the hungry dark above. Dark spots crowded the edges of his vision. His heart thundered. He fought to move, to do anything, but the spell held him fast. His breath came in shallow gasps. The glyphs pulsed in rhythm with Velthera's outstretched hand, and above the fissure, the crystal spun slowly, darker with every piece of him it swallowed. That's it! That's it! Velthera's voice climbed, bright with glee, and she cackled, radiant with terrible joy. Raven had folded her wings and plunged into a dive that transformed her into something more akin to lightning than bird. The Nightshawl blurred around her as air burned hot against her feathers, and the speed of her descent warped the wind itself into a high-pitched wail that embodied death and desperation. She tracked the dagger's trajectory with predatory meticulousness and timed her approach with the instincts of her kind. At the last possible second, just before the blade could vanish forever into the churning darkness below, her talons closed around its hilt with a grip that would not falter. She had it. There was no time to revel in her victory, though. Her wings strained against the thick, cursed air as she climbed back toward the heights. Every beat was an agony of effort. The crystal was indeed heavy for her in the shift, pulling at her like an anchor, resisting her ascent as though reluctant to be borne aloft by mortal wings. Her muscles burned with the strain, but she pushed harder and faster, driving herself back toward the tower's peak, in the rotunda where the battle had been waged. But the rotunda stood empty and destroyed when she reached it. Kai was already gone, but she knew exactly where he was headed. The crossing over the Umbral Basin felt endless beneath the burden she carried. The black waters churned far below, seemingly waiting to swallow her whole. Still, she did not falter. Her wings carved through the corrupted wind with singular purpose, driven by a certainty that burned brighter than fear. Now, as she soared high above the crater where Kai lay bound and dying beneath Velthera's terrible sigils, her heart pounded with the necessity of what must be done. There was no time for hesitation, no room for doubt. She opened her talons and released the blade. The crystal tumbled through the air, spinning end over end, its edge catching the Nexus's violet light in quick, spinning flashes, gleaming like the last defiant pulsar in a dying sky. It struck the ground in a hand's breadth from Kai's outstretched fingers, and the impact sent a sharp, reverberating chime through the air, like a bell tolling in the deepest places of the world. A tremor ran through the stone beneath him. Raven clicked her beak. It would have to be enough. Kai's mind slipped further into the void of exhaustion and pain. The threads of his soul were almost fully unraveled, pulled strand by strand into Velthera's hungry crystal, and he felt himself going out like a snuffed flame. Then, cutting through the haze, his fingers twitched against stone. The familiar edge of the crystal brushed his fingertips, and the moment they touched, the blade hummed beneath him. The language spiraling in its depths recognized him, even as he slipped further from the world. Above, a raven's cry split the air before the bird twisted and vanished into the dark. Somehow, the crystal had been delivered. At this moment, Kai didn't question how Raven did it, simply whispering in silent thanks to her, and a tear slipped down his cheek as the pain closed over him. His clothes frayed at the edges, as though the air itself meant to unmake him, along with his soul. But beneath the agony, his mind wandered loose from his body, adrift from the pain that ravaged it. Memories rose, sharp and unbidden. Aira's lavender eyes, fierce even as the blood pooled beneath her. The crystal archives, its voice a commandment from the ancient Myr'ides. Myr'ides, patient as she taught him to wield power without being ruled by it. Korik, steady against every storm. And his mother, whole and good, carried with him always. Words came to him then, not as complete thoughts, but as fragments. The archives, saying unmaking requires vast power. Era, saying, "They left this scar to prove what pain can do." The Crystal, saying, "Brute force required. Stab the heart." Something opened in the dark of his mind, calm and total, like a door, long sealed, finally giving way. And there, waiting inside where it had always been, lay his heart. Not the muscle beating weak in his chest, but the whole of what he carried, what he was, why he'd come this far. Kai's eyes snapped open. His breath caught as clarity cut through the pain. His fingers closed around the crystal's hilt, and the blade answered, recognizing his intent in turn. "Velthera," he said. She turned from the crystal to face him. "I surrender," he shouted. He raised the blade above his chest. The crystal's fractal lattice twisted to life in his grip, awakened by his resolve. It understood. Velthera's magic was closing on the last of his Elir. There was only one thing left to do. He clenched his jaw until it ached and drove the ancient relic of divine fire and untold power into his own chest. Velthera's sigils burned away, gone in an instant. The blade slid past his flesh and bone without resistance, and the moment it pierced his heart, his soul tore free. The sensation was like being ripped inside out, every last thread that bound him to his body snapping at once. Kai felt himself, whole and entire, wrenched from his flesh. Light burst outward from where he'd been, and he existed, for one crystalline moment, untethered and exposed, raw consciousness suspended between life and death, feeling nothing and everything at once. Then the power surged. The full well of Prismir erupted from the point where the blade met flesh, pouring through his emptied body. He'd become a hollow channel for forces too vast to be held by mortal flesh and soul together. The crystal needed him empty to become the bridge. The pain sharpened, then broke apart into something clean, something almost holy. His Elir spun outward, caught in the storm radiating from his body, and he saw it all at once, his own form burning with impossible light, Velthera stumbling backward, the fissure beginning to give way beneath her feet. The magic current twisted back upon her like a whip snapping toward the hand that cracked it. Velthera screamed. The force drove her back a step, then another, her trident disintegrating in her grip. Her cry curdling into raw and desperate sounds as the energy tore through her. The dark vortex spewing from the fissure thrashed against the invasion. Its tendrils flailed as the crystal's power flooded into it, and the Nightshawl began to buckle. Velthera clawed at the air, her form thinning into little more than a flicker of what it had been. Darkness peeled from her in streams, stripped away by the raw power channeling through Kai's body, until what remained of her broke apart entirely into streaks of shadow and light. The crystal met the vortex head-on in one last searing collision. Shockwaves rippled across the crater. The vortex let out a final wail before it folded in on itself, and the ground shuddered as if reality itself had convulsed in spasmodic thrusts. The Nightshawl shattered in the same instant Velthera died, her voice guttered out, and what remained of her scattered into motes of light that skittered along the stone before winking out, one by one. Above, the broken pieces of the Nightshawl rained down from the sky, disintegrating into embers that drifted and dimmed before they too went dark. Arin's first rays bled over the western horizon, gold breaking through the retreating dark. The hex that had pinned down the coast for so long finally lifted. Warmth found him where his body used to be. It wasn't heat, exactly, but Kai knew it was something akin to it, something he'd never felt before, and he was convinced that he would never feel again. Spreading outward, the way it must be spreading across the whole ruined coast below. 600 years. This was what it felt like. He wanted to hold on to it. He didn't get the chance, though. His consciousness scattered like wind-blown embers, carried far and wide by the force he'd unleashed, and by the stillness that followed after. Raven circled high above the crater, wings beating against the heavy air, watching Kai's fingers close around the dagger's hilt. He had it. He could fight back. He raised the blade above his own chest. "No! What are you doing?" She snapped her beak. He lifted it higher, point aimed at his heart. No, Kai, that's not what I didn't bring it so that you could." He plunged it into his own chest. The sound reached her even from this height, a sick, wet give. Raven's vision whitened at the edges. She'd risked everything for that blade, dove into the abyss for it, carried it across the bay for it, dropped it at his feet so he could fight, so he could live. And he'd turn around and he killed himself with it. Then, light erupted from the wound. Not blood. Light, pure and blinding. The shockwave of the divine brilliance hit her hard enough to spin her off course. She fought to steady herself, wings straining as the whole crater flooded with a dazzling golden wash. Below, Kai's body burned like something torn open at the seams, and Velthera was unraveling with it. Raven folded her wings and dropped like a stone. The crater's ridge rushed up to meet her, and 20 feet above the rock she shifted. Feathers gave way to shadow. Her form stretched and lengthened, bones cracking and reforming, wings drawing into arms, talons lengthening into legs, the whole change rippling through her in an instant. She hit the ground as a woman, gravel gnashing beneath her boots, knees bending to take the impact. She was already running before her body had finished settling into itself. She sprinted down the slope, lungs burning. The light was fading, that impossible flood of Ptesmir that had torn the Nightshawl apart, collapsing back into the point where Kai stood, where Kai was falling. She watched the crystal lift into the air and pull his body upright like a marionette worked by strings, like the ones from the Evergloom street vendors. For one moment she let herself believe it might be enough that whatever power remained in the blade could hold him together. Then it slid free from his chest, a sound that turned her stomach. The crystal rose, spinning slowly. Its runes flickered once, twice, hunting for something they couldn't find. Then the light went out entirely, and it dropped, striking the ground with a hollow clink that carried across the silent crater. Kai's body swayed. "No!" The word escaped her as his knees buckled. She pushed harder, faster, lungs on fire. 20 paces, 15, 10. He fell forward. She caught him. The path leading away from the Black Sentinel was quiet now. The chaos of the Vale's battle gave way to the whisper of the wind carrying off the last echoes of creatures born of shadow. Era rested against a boulder while Korik worked his mending. His hands moved over wounds that had taken her to the edge of death. He didn't speak. He hadn't said much of anything since the battle, and since the name had come out of Kai's mouth and rearranged everything he thought he knew. He tied off the last binding, his fingers lingering over her a moment longer than the work required. "Eric," he spoke the name low. "I made you a promise once. Didn't think I'd ever have a cause to keep it this way, but I do now." Era's eyes flicked to him. "Well, you're mine to look after," Korik said, gruffer now, already reaching for his mending kit like the moment hadn't happened. "Nia, Era, whatever name you're wearing, don't much matter to me which. You're his, and that makes you mine." She wanted to respond, but she didn't trust her voice, so she said nothing. Her body was battered and bloodied, each breath a deliberate act of will, but she managed a nod of acceptance. She turned her gaze toward the horizon. Above the fractured skyline, something was happening. The Nightshawl, that suffocating shroud that had stolen the light of Danetta's star from this coast for centuries, was tearing itself apart. Cracks spread through the darkness, widening with each passing moment. And through them came something Aira had never seen along this shore. Daylight. True light. Golden and warm and impossibly bright. The first rays of dawn pierced through the dissipating shadows, spilling across the desolation of Evergloom Bay. They touched the blackened stone with radiant warmth, painting the ruins of the Crystal Coast metropolis in shades of amber and rose. Aira watched, transfixed, as the light grew stronger, bolder, reclaiming the world from shadow. She remembered her father's words, spoken a lifetime ago when she was still Nia, before the witches took her, before the pain. He'd told her about the dawn and how it might have looked as it broke over the western sea. How beautiful it was. "You were right, Father," she murmured. Her voice was barely audible, but filled with wonder. "It's more beautiful than I ever imagined." A faint smile touched her lips. The warmth reached her face, gentle as a kiss, and for the first time in cycles, she felt something close to peace. Her eyes fluttered closed. Korik's voice rumbled somewhere distant, urgent. But Aira was already slipping away. Not into darkness this time, but into light. Into the warmth of a star she thought she'd never see again. The dawn spread across the coastline, washing away 6 centuries of shadow, heralding the beginning of a new era.